Welcome to Mosaic Arts Online. I'm Tammy McCullough. I would love to introduce to you the very talented artist and instructor, Arianna Gallo of Coco Mosaico. If this studio does not look familiar as our other one, then this is because we are here in Ravenna, Italy at the Coco Mosaico studio. So thank you, Arianna, for having us here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tammy. It's a pleasure having you here.
I'm so glad to be here. So let's dive into this incredible self-portrait mosaic course, which is really an incredible course. And what you're offering, how did it all get started?
So doing portraits is something that I always did in my studio. So I spent, in these last 20 years, I did a lot of portrait with different techniques, like a direct technique onto thin set or the temporary frame of lime or clay. But recently, in these last 7 years, thanks to my sister Anita Pilotti, I was able to start also a new technique of doing portrait, which is the technique onto transparent paper.
And you learned this because she went to a certain school?
Yeah, exactly. So Anita attended the Scuola Mosaicisti del Friuli, which is the Spilimbergo Mosaic School, a well-known school in Spilimbergo, which is a small town in the northeast of Italy. And she attended the school for 3 years. And the second year is focused on portrait. So she's very good in doing portrait. So let's say that Anita brought this technique to Coco Mosaico, and we combine this technique from Spilimbergo to my way to do portrait. And so now we have our own way, which is a mix of the two techniques.
I love it. So can you share some of the reasons you chose to teach a self-portrait mosaic course?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, because it's a way to learn about emotion, about yourself, and it's also a challenge, let's say. And then second, one of the other reasons is that if you do your self-portrait, you have more opportunity to explore by looking yourself, to explore how the anatomy works, how light and shadow works in a face. And also, by doing yourself, you have, less expectation from the others in order to do the perfect, a very good portrait. After the practice with yourself, then you can experiment also with other portraits.
With other people's faces.
With other people.
Yes. And even though you're teaching this technique in contemporary method, do you think it's important that people understand like the ancient anatomy and the ancient mosaics as well? Absolutely.
It's very important. I think that by observing and by doing replica of ancient mosaics could help you in learning the rules, let's say. So both Anita and me spent a lot of years in doing replica of ancient mosaics, plus I'm a restorer of mosaic, so I worked a lot with the ancient mosaics, and I think that it's a very good practice to do some experience in doing ancient mosaics. Replica, I wanted to say, and in this way, by learning the rules, you can even, in a certain point, when your skills are better, let's say, you can break the rule and find your own way to do your own style of self-portrait, like Anita and me did, and like we are going to share the rules with you.
Yes, and to start with, tell a little bit about how important it is to pick the right image before you do get started with your portrait, because there are certain rules that you really do want to follow, or guidelines, shall we say.
Absolutely. So the right picture is very, very important in order to be able to translate the image in a good mosaic. So we are going to see together some very important points in order to choose the right picture or take the right photo of yourself. And so we are going to explore where the light is from, shadows, contrast, composition, background, all this stuff that are very important.
Yeah. And so once the image is chosen, then we start to work on the palette. So share a little bit about what's in front of us here and how Sony does make it so easy because you buy the A cuts and they have the gradation. But share a little bit about how you're really making this accessible to so many students.
Yes. So I start to study, let's say, the picture that I choose, and then understanding where are the lightest part, where are the darkest parts, or where are the most saturated colors, in order to be able to find also some parts that have a kind of gradation of flesh tones. So it's like I'm going to show you in this course, it's not necessary to buy the entire palette of flesh color from Sony. Of course, you could, but I decided to use a shorter, limited palette in order to keep it, let's say, more simple, accessible.
And then on top of that, what makes this course so fabulous is the mixed media part of it. So share a little bit about all the materials that go into making this portrait, because it really makes it contemporary and fun, and I think you connect more with it.
Sure. So I like to use Italian smalti, especially from Orsoni, but I also like to mix it with some Mexican smalti, and the Mexican smalti are very good for flesh tones because you can buy like a small amount of the light
and the color
mixed gradation, color mixed in light flesh tones, medium flesh tones, and dark flesh tones. So combining with these materials, you can have the perfect result. And then I also like to use different materials for the hair, for example, or for the cloth. And so I'm going to show you how I use and how I cut the stained glass. And it's nice also to experiment with other materials. So if you have, for example, vitreous glass or ceramic, could be good as well.
Ceramic in this one here.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah, so it doesn't always have to be all smalti in this piece. And could people add in some marble or other materials, found objects?
Yes, yes, of course. I think if you decided to use smalti for your color for flesh tones palette, it's better to use just smalti.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you decide to use just marble for flesh tones, like I did in that portrait, Jacopo's portrait, you can do it, and then you can explore different materials for ears, earrings, and the eye. Of course, if you used marble for the flesh tones, you can use glass for lips and eyes.
And you used a little bit of a found object for your hair clip in this piece. So it's really a fun course. And then talk a little bit about how you do it on this plastic. We don't want to give too much away, but there is a very achievable way to do this by doing it with the image and the plastic film.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So I use this kind of plastic, which is very easy to find. It's like a pocket plastic for documents. Of course, I cut it in two. And I find that this technique, by putting the plastic directly onto the image, it helps in order to follow better the futures lines and the colors of the image.
Yeah, and then on top of it, you also like to outline the lips and the eyes with a very special technique I've never seen anywhere else.
Yes, I like to use lead. This, you can find lead in stripes, and I like to cut it, to shape it, and also to color it. And so, for example, in the outline of the eyes or of the irids, I like to color, to paint it with acrylic, and it gives more defined lines to your portrait.
And so if students are going to do this course, do they have to do a self-portrait, or do you feel like there's enough information in this course to do somebody else's portrait if they wanted to?
I give all the information for portrait. And so I really wanted to do a self-portrait, but of course every detail, all the steps of the technique are good for any kind of portrait
to
yes.
do. And then lastly, talk a little bit about your background and how fun that is to add for this style of contemporary mosaic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really like to experiment with color and with material, and also with different techniques. And so this is exactly a combination of different techniques, because, for example, the background, as you can see, is very flat. So I like also to give different texture in the same mosaic. So all of the parts of the face and the hair, of course, is very detailed, but then the background in contrast is very flat and just one color, and I really like this effect. And I really like to pour this liquid cement. Once, a long time ago, I used to pour plaster, but plaster, you know, has a very quick time of
setting up and drying.
Yes, and so it was always a mess. I did a lot of mosaic, even very nice with plaster, but then again, thanks to my sister, she came from the Spilimbergo Mosaic School with this special liquid cement that we are going to use, that we can color with pigments, and the duration, it stays liquid longer than plaster, and so it's just perfect.
And now, do you feel this course is for a beginner or someone with a little bit more mosaic experience?
So I think that it's better to have a little bit of experience, because a portrait is always something quite difficult to face.
Right.
Yeah, and so
a little experience is probably better off for this. And is there anything else that you want to add?
So yes, about the technique. So this technique, I think, is very convenient. So you can use this technique, of course, for portraits, and but also for other mosaics. It's very convenient because when you work with this technique on plastic, you need just a little bit of space. You don't need a lot of materials. You don't need, you know, for example, lime. My studio is big, and of course I have all the necessary stuff and tools for every different technique. But this one is very, very convenient because you can work in a small place. You can stop working for a while, like for a week, for 2 months, and you put your mosaic somewhere, and it stayed there. And when you take it again, it's the same. I mean, because when you work on a temporary frame of lime or of clay, you need to remember, okay, now I can't work on this mosaic, but I need to remember to wet it every day if it is summer, or every 2 days if it is winter. And so with this technique, you have a lot of freedom.
It does, and you can do anything with that technique. It does not have to be a portrait.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough. You have brought a master class to Mosaic Arts Online. This is an incredible course. She covers everything. You start with this photo, you end up with this portrait. You could actually learn alongside Arianna making her self-portrait if that makes you more comfortable as a practice piece. But we encourage you to try your own self-portrait. You will probably not master it the first time, But
yeah.
practice, 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 experiment, have fun, and I can't thank you enough for bringing this to Mosaic Arts Online.
It was a great pleasure. I can't wait to see your mosaics.
Absolutely.